Here's a drawing I showed you last time. There are numbers of wires here, but there's no indication of what pins those correlate to. I'll show you a close-up picture of this connector. Get a pointer here. So according to the numbers on this connector, this is pin 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So it goes in a counterclockwise fashion. So if I connect to the red wire, which is the positive or power wire, should be on pin 1 if these actually meant pin numbers. Well, this one was labeled as pin 1. Let me turn the meter on here. And if I take my little probe here and touch it to the red wire. Okay, so there's nothing on pin 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if this is correct, then it is for the male half of the plug, not the female half. But in the rest of the world, the pin numbers are the same on the male or the female. So pin 1 on the female would be pin 1 here on the male. In which case, when you wire these up, you hook the red wire to pin 1 on this and red wire on pin 1 on the other, so that when you mate them together, pin 1 mates to pin 1. So they did not follow that convention. So I will doctor up this drawing as I go. And this is the female half of the connector. So pin 5 would be the red, which is power. And the black, which should be pin 5, which would have been here, is probably here. Nope. So those numbers do not correlate to pin numbers. So that is pin 4. So it's only pin 4. So pin 4 is ground. Okay, let's go over to the yellow, which is our video. And it's showing up on my pin 1. Let's see if the shield is connected to anything. Nope, it's not even tied to ground. Okay, so just the 3 wires. So now I know the pin out. And don't worry about that. That doesn't mean anything. Okay, let's open this box up and let's see what's inside. These little bar magnets are good for keeping all the hardware together. And this front panel is actually just plugged in right here. So if I wiggle this, I can separate the two. Okay, bring my cheat sheet back over. Let's plug into one of these. That's also a little different too. Usually, conventionally, that little alignment pin is at the top. And with it oriented like this, that would be upside down. Might be easier to see on this other connector. Let me go for this one. So we're going to hook up to the yellow one, which is our video. And according to my diagram, it should be this one. Well, no, sorry, it's upside down. So that, since this is the very top, so there's my video. So what we're looking at is that. Okay, our ground, which is pin 4, which is this one. And the case is grounded also. That's not a bad thing. Let's see. And power. And it should be pin 5, which is this one. Okay. So what I will do is I will tap off of 2 of these connections, the video and the ground, and I'll just solder up a couple of wires to that. And ultimately what I'm going to do is, once I verify this is going to work, I'm going to drill a hole in the top of this case, and I'm going to bring out all of the wires, the 3 wires, and I've got a nice little project box. These are made by Pomona. You'll find them at all kinds of electronic places like Newark and DigiKey, and they do sell them on Amazon as well, but I think they're more expensive there. And anyway, this is what the box comes with: is a lid, some screws. It's all aluminum. I went ahead and marked it up, and I got a whole bag of B and C connectors, and I did buy these on Amazon. So what I will end up doing is drilling an appropriate size hole for each of these. Of course, these will be mounted upwards like this, but that's kind of how they're going to be spaced. And I made sure there's enough room that when they're all mounted, all 3 nuts clear. And I will drill a hole in the bottom, and the cables will disappear in there. So if I ever need to service this, I can take off this top panel and get to the connectors. But all the wires will be hidden inside this case as well. So there's nothing I need to modify on here. And And here's how it's going to work: is there will be a grounding ring. So once the hole is drilled, the connector will go through, the grounding ring will go on, the nut will go on top of that, it'll pinch down onto the lid of the box, and then the other wire will go into the cup on the end of the BNC and be soldered in place as well. And there's my video and my ground. I can't wire these all up at once because this connector has to go through the hole first. But I could go ahead and solder on the ground wire, which I've done. This is the, I guess you'd call it a manual, an instructional sheet that came with the box itself. Again, it doesn't tell you the pinouts for the video connector, but it does give me the pinout of the power connector, allowing me to power this up on the bench. So these are actual pin numbers, or these are not, and it also doesn't say pin number, which I don't know why they'd bother to number them, because it doesn't mean anything. So let me see if I can power this up on the bench. I have a 7-inch LCD monitor that I will connect up to the wires I'm going to attach here to make sure that the new video camera that I'm installing actually puts out composite video. So I will connect this to here, and we'll see if I can get video directly out of it. If so, then I can go ahead and wire this thing up and connect it to my security DVR. Excuse all the wires in the mess. Here's the camera that I've got temporarily hooked up. And what I'm doing now is I'm actually probing the connector and trying to look at the raw video coming from the camera. If you can see that on my monitor. Okay, so this is going to work. I'll go ahead and disconnect the battery before I bump anything and make sparks. So what I've done is I tied into pin 3. Get my drawing here again. So I tied into pin 3, which is my 12 to 24 volt input power. So I tied into the back of it. And then this is using a common chassis ground. So rather than try to get to the ground, which is pin 5, which is the middle one down at the bottom, that'd be very difficult to get down there to probe it. I just connected onto the chassis. So that works. So I powered this up. I initially looked at the video component coming out here because this is made for a composite output to hook to a monitor. But I wanted to verify that all 3 camera inputs were using a composite style video, which they are. So now I can tie a couple of wires on each of those connectors, drill a hole in the box, put my little Pomoto box up here with BNC connectors on there, button it all up, put this back in the RV, plug it back in, and hook up my DVR. And I also have a power supply for the DVR, so let's take a look at that next.